Bhagavad Gita is a book of mankind's collected experience of and answers to life's most basic questions. Who I am, from where do I come, what is my purpose and destiny, and most practically, how do I find happiness? These podcasts originate in the lectures of Neil Bhatt, a disciple of Swami Chinmayananda. They are presented here in 20 to 30-minute segments, each covering 3 of the Gita's 701 verses. Welcome to Gita Wisdom for Daily Living.
We had been discussing chapter 5, Sannyas Yoga, Yoga of Renunciation. We have seen from chapter 2 to chapter 5 so far that Bhagavad is giving us the steps for spiritual evolution. So first thing, we start with introspection. What are your predominant qualities in your personality? If I find that I am predominantly tamasic and lazy and procrastinating and doing everything, then the first thing I have to do is get rid of my tamas. So that's the beginning of my journey. As part of this prakriti, tamas is very natural to me, but to make spiritual evolution, I have to shake off my tamas and become active, rajasic. Activity is the signature of life. Life expresses through activity. So I have to actively work in this world. If I start getting active, I need motivation to act in this world. That motivation comes from my desires to acquire things, accomplish things. So I have this desire to better myself. That is somewhat a selfish desire. That I'm only thinking about myself to make myself better. The Bhagavan said that will create conflict. I experience while acting in this world, the more I try to be active, there are more conflicts, and that doesn't give me the joy which I am seeking. Because the next step is, till now you're working for a particular result from your actions, go to the next level, work for the greater good. So we have seen in chapter 3, Karma Yoga. Work for the greater good, without any expectations for the results. So I have graduated from a tamasic being to a rajasic being working for the desire-prompted actions, to now working for the greater good. I'm working not just for me, but I'm working for the greater good. And even there, Bhagavan said, you may find disappointments. You have worked hard for the betterment of your family, your community, but the results are not as you expected. This is where we are actually. At the smallest unit of Karma Yoga, we work for our family. That all of us do. None of us work for just himself or herself. We work for our family. At a minimum, we want the betterment of our family. And then when my efforts and the results do not jive, I get disappointed. So Bhagavan said, the next step is you start thinking that you are not doing anything, which is Sannyasa Yoga. I graduated from doing only desire-prompted actions to actions for the greater good, but even that is not giving me the happiness and satisfaction and a bliss that I am seeking. In this chapter, chapter 5, we have seen verse 8, Naiva kinchit karomi iti yuktah manyate tattvavit. If you are trying to achieve that state of being one with your own happiness, with one with your own self, achieving the bliss, then start thinking that you are not doing anything. Naiva kinchit karomi iti manyate. So then my question is, then who is doing it? Activity is happening, then who is doing it? So then, okay, Bhagavan is doing it. He is almighty, he is just doing it and we are not doing anything. Bhagavan says, that's not true. He said, Na kartrutvam na karmani lokasya srujati prabhu. In verse 14 he said, even I am not doing anything. I, as the Lord of this universe, this cosmos, this jagat, I am not doing anything. I am not creating any actions, nor I am creating any sense of agency. I, as a limited being, come to the conclusion that I am not capable of doing anything unless I am enabled by the forces around me, then I am not the doer. But then I am not doing, somebody else must be doing, well, that must be Bhagwan. Bhagwan said, I am not doing it. Bhagwan, then you must be the one who is putting these actions and results together. The death and destruction is all around us. Up till now, just seeing the numbers on the screen. But when it hits our own family, then it becomes very, very difficult. So we say, who is doing it? And Bhagwan said, I am not the cause. Where is this compassionate Lord? Why is He not stopping this carnage which is going on through this coronavirus? And Bhagwan said, I am not doing anything. Na kartrutvam na karmani lokasya srujati prabhu na karma phala sanyogam. Even I am not really connecting actions with their results. That's not my business. Neither that is your business. I as a limited being is not capable of connecting my actions with the results. Bhagavan said, as the Lord also, I am not involved in that. Then who is involved? Bhagavan said, Swabhave vastuhu pravartate. It is happening as per the laws of nature. The world is functioning as governed by the laws of Prakriti. From our Vedantic perspective, everything in Prakriti has three gunas. These gunas of individual constituent parts, when they interact with each other, they create this activity and results. So Bhagavan says, Swabhave vastu pravartate. Everything in nature is guided by Prakriti. And as long as you are identified with the Prakriti, you have to abide by the laws of Prakriti. And therefore, if you are really seeking bliss, what you should do, Bhagavan said, Bahya sparsesu asaktatma. You should become unattached with the contacts with the world outside. Whatever is happening in the Prakriti, if you identify with the Prakriti, you have to bear the consequences. But if you are not attached, if you are not involved in it, then you will be just a witness. As I said, we were seeing the numbers on the screen. 500,000 people died in Corona. Not really a problem. When your family member dies, then it's a problem. Because now I'm attached. And so Bhagavan said, only remedy is that you become bahya sparsesu. From the contacts with the world outside, asaktat, unattached. It does not say inactive. You don't get attached. You as the self, which you consider I, should not be involved in that activity. Vindati atmani yat sukham. Such a person finds happiness within himself. So this is the sannyas yoga that we have learned. And Bhagavan said, why you should do it? Ehi sansparsaja bhogaha. All the enjoyment which you are getting in your life that you thought, I enjoyed this and then I did this, they are born of the context with the world outside. Only when I switch on the radio and hear the song which I like, then I enjoy it. That's the contact with the world outside. Dukha yonaya yevate. They are the wombs of unhappiness. Everything that has the capability to give me happiness has equal capability to give me unhappiness. And while I'm enjoying the happiness, what I'm doing is I am overlooking the capacity of that contact to give me unhappiness. When the unhappiness comes, that's the only time we realize. But if I know that this thing has capacity to give me unhappiness, then I should become unattached. Antavantaha kaunteya na tesu ramate buddhaha. A wise person does not get involved. He does not participate. But he is not mentally involved in it. Because they are finite. Every experience that I have, which gives me happiness, has a beginning and an end. No matter how enjoyable it is. My success in my profession, my achievement in the field of my liking, any hobby that I have, whatever I'm doing has beginning and an end. If I think this is going to continue, a good stock market is going to be always keep going up and up. Bhagavan said that's not a reality. It has a beginning and an end, If you know that, then you may participate in it, but do not get involved in it. Bhagavan said that's the key. That's sannyasa. Sannyasa is to continue your participation without your active involvement mentally. That you are not involved in it. And therefore, Bhagavan said, Yah antaha sukhaha antaha ramaha tatha antaha jyotihi eva sahayogi brahma nirvanam brahmabhut adhigacchati. So person who has understood this fact, it's not that he is not having any happiness in life. So it's not that when I have given up in a sense that I become unattached to the contact world outside, that I have no happiness, then my life is just a miserable existence. Bhagavan said, no, that's not true. You will find happiness in your own self. Antaha sukha, you find happiness within yourself. Ya anta rama, you will revel in your own self. That will be your recreation. Identifying with yourself, realizing it is not limited to my body, mind and intellect, you will find that great happiness. Yah antaha jyotihi. To know myself, I don't have to rely on the world outside. The world doesn't have to tell me whether I'm short or tall. The world doesn't tell me I'm rich or poor. The world doesn't have to tell me whether I'm powerful or powerless. These are my criteria which I have chosen to gauge myself with. Other people are taller than me, therefore I'm short. Other people are more powerful than I am, therefore I'm powerless. People are richer than me, therefore I'm poor. These are my criteria. Bhagavan said these are not the criteria which you should be using. You use your own gauge of who you are. For knowing that, you do not need any gauge from outside. Sahayogihi Brahma Nirvanam. Such a person extinguishes his own self in Brahman. Nirvanam is to dissolve yourself, to blow out yourself. This is something like if you are running a small company and you had been running happily with all the joys and sorrows and disappointment with it. At some point I'd say, this is too much. I have to do something about it. Maybe some large company I can merge with, or some large company come and buy me out. So you start making those efforts. Once a company acquires you, you extinguished your identification as that small company. If you're XYZ LLC, doing business for a long time, but now the time has come, I need to merge with a larger company. I merge with a large company, ABC Corporation. I still exist. My staff still exists. I exist. Activity which was going on exists. But that identification is gone. Now no longer at XYZ LLC, it is a part of ABC Corporation. All the attributes and all the benefits and all the power of ABC Corporation now are the powers of that XYZ LLC. Bhagavan said that's what happens in Brahma Nirvana. Sahayogi, that yogi, that limited self who has now realized that he is not limited and dissolved his limitedness in the greatness of Brahman, he has dissolved his identification. He is no longer identifying with the limitedness. Brahma bhutaha adhigacchati. He becomes one with that all-pervading, almighty, all-blissful self, that Brahman. And the next verse says, Labhante Brahma Nirvanam Rushaya Kshina Kalmashaha. These are the qualifications I require. A big company acquires a small company. They're also looking for some attributes in that company. Big company will not just come and acquire any small company. Company which is in line with the activity of the big company. That is the only small company that big company will acquire. That which will amplify the activity of the big company. It's a, which yogi will achieve this Brahma Nirvanam? That he can extinguish his own self? Rusaya Kshina Kalmashaha, whose sins are wiped out. And we have seen the sin is nothing but my mental impression. This agitations in my mind is creating the veiling of my true self. These agitations in my mind that I am this limited self, I am a mortal being, someday I'll die. All these agitations are covering myself, which Bhagavan said in chapter 2, that you're the immortal being. Kshina kalmashaha, those who are free of impurities of mind. So all we have to do is work on purification of our internal instrument. So Bhagavan said, one who has purified his internal instrument is kshina kalmashaha. Chinna dvaidaha, those who are not in doubt whether this is right or that is right. Also, they are beyond dualities. When I merge with the larger company, the duality has to go away. If I still remain with that identification, oh no, I'm part of ABC Corporation, but we are actually XYZ LLC, then it does not work. So Bhagavan says, Chinna dvaidaha, one who has destroyed his duality. I and the world are not two separate entities. This world and I are part of the same Prakriti. Yat Atmanaha, who is controlled over his self. And now I'm not completely inactive. A large company acquires a small company. The small company people now don't take vacations and say, we have to relax now, we are no longer in business XYZ. You have to continue to work now. Actually, now you have to work for the betterment of the larger corporation, not the smaller company that you are working for. Sarva bhuta hite rataha. Once that person identifies with the greater good, the greatest good, which is Brahman, then he has to work even harder for the betterment of all. Sarva bhuta hite, all being, not just my family, my community, or the human race, but for all beings. Now that he has identified with that all-pervading self, he, by his very nature, will be engaged in betterment of all beings. Kama krodha vyuktanam yatinam yatachetasam abhitaha brahma nirvanam vartate viditam atmanaha. Kama krodha vyuktanam, that yati, that seeker, who has now gone beyond kama and krodha, is devoid of desire and anger. Desire and anger were the expressions of my incompleteness. When I considered myself to be a limited being, then I had desires to grow, to achieve things. Those desires were creating this force in me, which was creating agitation. And when I could not achieve what I tried to achieve, I became angry. Bhagavan said, these two things, once you are beyond that, it's a kama krodha vyuktana, yatinam yatachetasam, who has a control over his thoughts. Once I merge with that larger company, I can't still keep holding the thought that, I actually am part of XYZ LLC. And therefore, I should only act this way. Their culture is this, our culture is that. None of that. Bhagavan said, once you control your thoughts, identify with the Supreme Self, your thoughts are part of the entire Prakriti. Yat chetasam. Abhitaha Brahma Nirvanam. He sees freedom all around him, everywhere. No matter what he does or what situation he's in, he finds freedom in it. That, the absolute freedom, Abhitaha Brahma Nirvanam, because he has dissolved his limitedness in that Brahman. This Nirvanam word is really important word. As long as I keep my identity and then wants to find liberation, those two do not jive. So what we want to do is say, I want to realize myself. Which I is realizing? That big I. That nirvanam is to extinguishing your I. That I is gone. Who realizes is not even a question anymore. Brahma nirmanam abhitaha. Everywhere there is freedom. Vartate viditam atmanam. The one who knows his self, he finds this unlimited bliss, the unlimited freedom in that identification with the Brahman. Now I'll stop right here. If you find this podcast helpful, please support it by donating any amount by going to the episode's website at neilbhatt.podbean.com or at chinmayarichmond.org. Thank you. Om Sarve Bhavantu Sukhina Sarve Santu Niramayaha Sarve Bhadrani Pashyantu Ma Kaschid Dukkha Bhag Bhave. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om. Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Hari Om.